So here we go. Today's episode is about the reason for the season. And today is a big celebration day because it is Christmas Eve.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. Tomorrow's the big day. So we're going to go over some things, the origins of Christmas and how this got going. So,
Navidad. Navidad in Spanish. For you non-English speakers out there listening, Navidad.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get it started.
Let's do it.
All right, so welcome back. So we're going to jump right into it here. Before the birth of Christ, December's coldest nights were marked by festivals honoring the sun's return, where fire, feasting, prayer, and that was to ward off the long, bitter nights. The pagans from Europe and beyond, they had festivals and things like that they did celebrations. And after Christianity took hold, the church leaders needed a way to embrace these old traditions while still transforming those into a celebration for Christ. They couldn't erase the traditions, but they needed to fuse them together into Christianity and make December familiar but new at the same time. What we're going to be going over today is basically the origins of Christmas and how it came to be. Where do we come up with these dates and the time of year and everything? They've tried to figure out based on the North Star and at the time and astrologically when Christ would have been born. And if you guys didn't tune into last week's episode, it was about the movie Mary on Netflix. And if you haven't checked out that episode, I highly recommend you go back and check it out. One of the things that we did talk about in that episode that I think reigns true in this episode here is that a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. Like some of the characters in the story in the Bible, they're not the main characters. They fulfilled their purpose in their part of the story, and then they kind of fade away, right? They're not needed as much.
Correct.
And I think a lot of these things, like I love to dig into history and find out dates and how long ago did that happen and when was that. And it's more of a exploratory thing for me. It really doesn't matter. Like, does it matter what exact date Jesus was born on? I mean, if it was that important, do you think they would have put it in the Bible?
Yeah.
Right. They would have said it was a Tuesday at noon on the 25th or whatever.
At
I don't
3
think it was
p.m.
Yeah, 3 p.m. or whatever. It wasn't that important, Was it daylight saving time at the time or not?
And I see, and that's where I kind of agree with you on. Well, I agree with you a lot of things, but I think we're at this point we're kind of saying is we're splitting hairs now. You know what I mean? Like
we are splitting hairs on stuff. Absolutely.
You can't. There's the moral. You know how they say there's a moral to the story. There's a
Right.
moral to the story. Everything around it is irrelevant. And it's only relevant until it gets to the morality of that story. Other than that,
correct.
There's no point in it. So it's important to know that because there was a lot. So we have to remember, right? During that time, there was a lot of worshiping of gods and all kinds of things going on, even after Christ's arrival. So when they started,
right.
They, like you said earlier, they had to absorb these pagan things and and the only way to eradicate them is to absorb them and make them part of something that they totally and contrary to what those beliefs are, and make it for what it is. And I think originally it was called the Feast of the Nativity back before they decided December 25th is the day that we're going to pick. That's why I just wanted to say that. I think you're right. I think you're right on the money when you say like the exact date is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's the reason behind it is what's the key.
Well, we got to remember things like the beginning of Christianity, right, was obviously after Jesus' death and resurrection. You would say, well, Christianity started when he was born. Well, it really didn't,
no,
right?
33 years old when he started.
Exactly.
Really.
When his teachings started happening. So, but we celebrate his birth because it was a time of celebration for Christ on earth that has basically created this Christian religion, fellowship, whatever you want to say. And that was the spinoff from Judaism, right? Because all the people that became Christians were all Jews. All of them were, right? And even later on down the road, the Roman Catholic Church became, even though it's Catholic, that's still part of Christianity. You still believe in the virgin birth of Jesus and everything. And you got to imagine the Romans were part of the whole pagan thing, right? They didn't believe in Christianity whatsoever in the beginning. Christianity,
but the Catholic Church was one of the biggest donators to the Roman Empire.
they were. Well, you know what? So all through medieval times and the Roman Empire, they were smart with this too. You have kings and queens that are sitting there trying to get these people to pay taxes, right? So they have to pay money, part of their crops, animals. Sometimes they get to take their wife before they get their wife, kind of thing, all kinds of crazy stuff that they did. These simple farmers and stuff and sheep herders would fight the kings and the knights and the tax collectors tooth and nail. And yet they would give their last coin to the humble friar or priest or whatever walking around that had no sword, had no weapon, nothing. And they would freely give their money to him. Well, those kings and queens weren't stupid. They said, you know what? Hey, you priest, we're going to set you up in a nice room you can get a big gold crown all encrusted in jewels and everything. But all you have to do is make sure that people serve the crown and the king. And that's what, because it does state in the Bible that you're supposed to pay your tithings to God, but also to Caesar, right? Christianity, if you think about it, was born in the shadow of the Roman Empire, right? That's where all of this took place. Christianity was seen as a threat, challenged the gods and traditions that had anchored society for centuries, for nearly 3 centuries, which equates to 300 years. Now, to put that into perspective right now, we're doing this on December 24th, 2024. 300 years ago was 1724. Now, think about that. 1724. How long ago does that seem? So for 300 years, that span from 1724 to now, right, would be how long Christianity survived under Roman rule. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And so Christianity was just felt as a threat to the Romans. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine, he converted to Christianity. And Constantine declared Christianity the Roman Empire's favorite faith. And it turned the Christian church into an extremely powerful institution at that time. You have these fathers of the church, which would become, and I don't know if they were called the Pope or whatever back then, but, the people that were at the head of the church, they were very powerful because they were right next to the emperors or right next to the kings, depending on, what part of the world they were in.
Well, I think there might have been popes, and I think they were, and you could almost tell by the name of the first pope or the pope who chose December 25th. I think his name was Pope Julius the First. And so that kind of tells you something about Rome and their interaction with the Roman and the church. I'm thinking because I don't know who Julius, where that name came from other than Julius Caesar. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that once they were absorbed into Rome, and as being part of the primary religion for the Roman Empire, they became extremely powerful. You know?
Well, so the very first pope was Saint Peter, and that was in 32, right? So 32, because Jesus' teachings.
Well, the Catholics named him a pope. He was the apostle, in which God said, "You are the rock." So,
right.
But I don't think Jesus called him a pope.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
No, they can't. Well, no, and there's in the Bible, there's no such thing as a cardinal or or any of that stuff. So that's all that stuff's man made.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 380 AD, Emperor Theodosius, I want to say is his name.
Uh-huh.
He made Christian. So this is only 380 years. Actually, less than that. What would that be? 350 years, I guess. 350 years after Jesus's teachings and everything. Theodosius made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, banning all other forms of worship. So you imagine for 300 years, Christianity was under the boot of the Roman Empire, right? After another 300 years there, you've got this entire changeover, right? Pagan temples were shuttered, rituals were condemned, and they started saying that a lot of those things that they did were close to, and they didn't use the word devil worship back then, but it was evil, it was against God's will and everything.
Moses'
So
laws.
yeah, so the big issue was the pagan beliefs and customs were deeply woven into the lives of the people, and to completely erase them would be almost impossible. Because you imagine this is kids being raised and, families, these are traditional things they do all
So
the
they had to be
time, right?
absorbed.
Yeah, they had to be absorbed into Christianity. So the church took the festivals based around things such as the sun or the moon cycles and wove those into saints' days and, Christian festivals. For example, like winter solstice, we all hear about that, right?
Yeah.
So the winter solstice,
Thank
once a
you,
time,
Aztecs.
the Aztecs, yeah, it was once a time of rebirth for the sun, and the pagan used it as a marker when wintertime was going to be over. They would use that as the marker for it was the longest day of the year or what have you. So now the church and the emperors at that time, they said, well, that's going to be what we're going to use for the birth of Christ. So now you've taken something called the winter solstice, and it's roughly in that same time frame. Now we're going to make that into what we call Christmas and where the birth of Christ is. So those quote unquote pagans are going to be celebrating at the same time as the birth of Christ, right? And vice versa. And so it wasn't, a lot of people say, well, Christmas and all this kind of stuff, these are pagan holidays. We now are celebrating as Christianity. That's not the case. It's these things were melded together and to be easier for the emperors at that time, because it was very difficult for them to tell people, listen, you can't do this. And poor people that are living away from the kingdom or the castle or whatever, you can't make them not light a bonfire and do all
Yeah.
these kind of things out there. So using familiar seasonal celebrations, the church would reach the hearts of those who clung to their ancestral ways, making an easier transition from pagan worship to Christianity. The longest night of the year is always in December. So, for example, like this year, the longest night of the year is going to be December 21st. So, really close to the 25th, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to probably say back then, they probably didn't have a super accurate way of knowing which night was going to be the longest, but they were close enough, right? We're splitting hairs, right? Going back to where we're splitting hairs, like it's a couple days off. It doesn't really matter. And the whole purpose of this isn't to know the exact date of his birth or whatever. And again, Christianity didn't start until, he was into his 30s. So it doesn't really matter that we're trying to figure out the birth. These are the celebrations that were put together from like the pagans, and the emperor used that along with the church. Pagans and the Christian festivals were almost at the same thing. So they would slowly start being pieced together so much that
So
within 20, 50, 100 years, they just became like the same thing, and it was really watered down over time.
So let me see if I'm clear about this. So by holding Christmas at the same time as winter solstice festivities per se, right? The church increased, I guess, the chances of Christmas being more popular or overwhelmingly popular to take over the pagan tradition. Is that am I correct on saying that?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So, I mean, it makes sense. And now it makes sense why people say, well, it started with paganism and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to say they're not correct because they kind of are. It did start with paganism, but it was not in the intent that they think that we adopted it. It's more of
Right.
like we are trying to eradicate it by substituting it with something in Christianity. That is
Right.
true. That did happen and that we should celebrate.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct about that. And I think that people forget, and again, we're back to that whole splitting hairs, the true meaning of Christmas, and people, and we could sit here all day and break it down as to why, and the paganism and this and that, and the trees is the same as whatever this and that, and I mean we could sit here and do this for forever, right? That
Right.
the golden monkey and the gold cow or whatever, but the decorations and whatever. But the end of the day, it's really going to fall on us as individuals as to what it means for us.
Right.
I think now today has it now, because clearly there was some time. It took some time, I'm assuming, to go from people celebrating winter solstice to celebrating Christmas. I'm assuming there was quite a bit of time for that to transition and paganism lose its popularity and Christianity or Christmas increase. So, right? Am I
Yeah.
correct in saying that?
Yep.
So now, the other side of the spectrum, we've now taken Christmas and made it this multi-million-dollar
Hallmark holiday.
Hallmark holiday that, again, we have lost the meaning behind it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Christmas really mean mass on Christ's day, on Christ or something like that? Doesn't that what it means, Christmas?
Yeah.
Right? And so we cannot forget that the meaning behind Christmas is the birth of Christ, right?
Right.
And yet we have forgotten. I think there's so much to be thankful for, and kind of like we talked about it in our last episode about Thanksgiving. We've gone away from the meaning of what it is to give thanks, and it's not thanks for the pilgrims coming and whatnot, and
Right.
Indians and turkeys and Pocahontas and all that. It was there's
Elizabeth
meaning.
Warren.
Yeah, that one. There's meaning behind it, and we just tend to forget about it. And I think it's important to remember that. I don't know what is your thought on. Clearly, you've read about it. So, what is your thought on the gift exchange, on on the trees and things like that, for those viewers that are out there that are wondering, like, well, where does that kind of fall in? And I know, again, I don't want to go into splitting hairs, but is there at some point someone said, hey, let's decorate a tree and let's put a star as a reminder of the North Star and the birth of Jesus, and the three wise men, have them bringing gifts to the newborn king and
Right.
things like that. I'm assuming it has something to do with that, or what did you find in your reading with any of that?
I think most people know the whole Saint Nicholas deal, and the reason he became a saint, and I don't specifically know if he was, what do they call it, canonized or whatever, and made him a saint that way.
Yeah.
But they considered him a saint because he did a lot of good things for like kids that were on the streets and everything.
Right.
And the one situation, if you look it up, you read the story, it's where there was a father and he had a couple kids that mother, passed away, left, whatever happened. And the kids were a little destitute, and the dad was going to have to basically sell these kids off as slaves, because at these times, like if you owed debt, I mean, they could take your life basically, right? I mean, debts had to be paid back. And so St. Nicholas would go by his window or whatever, of course there's hundreds of theories to the story, but he would throw like change and he'd never told the dad, right? And he just did this unbeknownst to this father. And that's where it kind of got its start from. So gifting to people, it was actually done in secret. So nowadays you hear about the Secret Santa thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's more of what was done back then. And then it got to be a celebration where, you knew that you were giving the gift. Here's the problem. So what happens is that, and it even, talks about this in the Bible, we are supposed to give freely, right? From our hearts. And if you are giving something, expecting something in return, that's called a transaction. That's not called a gift, right? So a gift doesn't have to be given and the other person know that it was even you, right? You can just anonymously give a gift. And that was kind of the way that, because you got to imagine, like, these people were very prideful and they were embarrassed if somebody gave them something. So that's where the whole gift giving thing
I'm not embarrassed if I'm gifted something. I'm just saying, just anybody listening.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a Barrett 50 cal under the tree, I'm not going to be embarrassed to take it. So Christmas trees, as far as they know, came from Germany. There were some cultures over there.
Those Germans, boy. They come up with some things, boy, I would tell you.
And so the whole thing behind, and this is the thing, is people are like, oh, it was a pagan thing. They danced around a burning tree or something like that. God. Well, the pagans very well may have done that, but the original Christmas tree was from Germany, and it was a tree that they put up, and they would hang apples on it. Because remember, I mean, this is a long time ago.
Didn't Krampus come from Germany?
They didn't have. Krampus did. Krampus came from Germany too.
You know what I mean?
But so they would have a fir tree, and they would hang apples on it. You know why they did that?
No.
to represent the first tree in the Garden of Eden.
Oh.
So with the apples, right? Now, it doesn't specify in the Bible that it was an
Why would they
apple.
put a tree that caused our sin? Come on, Germans. What are you doing? Could it
There
be
you
like
are.
roses or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
I like maple. How about a little maple tree?
Right.
You know what I mean? God. Let's
don't know.
remind these guys why we're in the situation that we are. Let's put a Christmas tree with apples.
Well, good thing it was the Germans back then that did it, because if it was the Americans now, we would have put up a stripper pole or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
So that's some of the things from the
Okay,
traditions
all
that
right.
come from those days. So and the reason that wintertime, that the pagans were celebrating the way they did, like I said before, is that it's the time of year that the sun is out the least, right? All of Rome and ancient Europe was above what's called the 40th parallel. So you're pretty high up on the globe, right? So during the wintertime, a lot less sun, right? And especially if you go up into like the Scandinavian countries and stuff like that, way less, because they're up there like if you go to Alaska right now, you visit Alaska, it's like dark all day long. There's no sunlight, right? So here's one of the things is it was a longstanding belief that spirits, ancestors, and gods roam freely during the long winter nights. So for these pagans, that's what that time of year they prayed more, and they were, of course, they're praying to their gods, whatever their gods were, but for protection and all these kind of things. Going back to the emperors at the time and the kings and everything, they wanted to incorporate that whole thing. You're praying to a god, it's wintertime, it's dark outside and everything. We're going to take the whole deal of Christianity, where you have a savior that's going to, take care of you and all this kind of stuff, and just pray to him. And again, over time, they kept watering down the pagan rituals and turned them more into Christian rituals. The tree, again, it's the splitting hair thing. It's the who cares about a Christmas tree, right? That's not what the whole thing is about. People put a Christmas tree up in the early days as it was symbolic of, the season, right? And that you're celebrating the birth of man, the Garden of Eden, the tree, the apple, all that kind of stuff. Well, as time goes on, then you have the pagans had the trees that they would burn and all this to, light the middle of winter, to light their way in the darkness, because they got all the spirits around them and all that kind of stuff. So those two started to kind of meld together. And then fast forward to modern day, we've got plastic trees with lights all over them and presents under them, right? So we've taken all of those things and really just commercialized everything nowadays, right? Based on stuff that happened in the past.
Correct.
And,
Excuse me.
are there some origins of paganism in there? Of course. But a lot of that stuff was it was a big parallel to Christianity.
It was intentional, I would assume.
Right? It was very intentional. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I get it. I mean, I'm sure it was hard. Now we got this religion that's fast growing and that, comes directly from the Son of God, and they have to eradicate these false religions, these evil things that have actually been around for a long time at this point.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to get rid of them, and how better than to replace them? Because trying to do something new and altogether just different from those would be so impossible because of tradition. Just look what happened to the Aztecs, right? They didn't believe in Christianity or in any of that, and they were forced into it. In doing so, it kind of eradicated all the traditions that the Aztecs had, and lost a lot of it. Reverse engineering here, right? They're like figuring, hey, it's, they did the same thing. They're like, why do all the work? Let's just kind of encompass it with paganism. Would be just the shadow of the past. It's not even going to be, because Christianity took over. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. But, clearly now, they leave it to the rest of us to try to tell everybody, look, bro, it didn't start as that. Let me explain. Let me explain to you. But
yeah, so the biggest ones is the Santa Claus thing, right? Because people are like, well, what does Santa Claus have to do with Christmas? So again,
where's that come from?
So again, it's not the man, right? Saint Nicholas, right? The guy that was giving to who? To children and to people that were less fortunate, right? So that was the whole idea behind Christmas back at that time, was that people that were, if you go back far enough, there was no such thing as welfare programs. So the only time people could get help was from wealthy people giving to those folks. And during that time of year, just like it is now, more soup kitchens are open. We're giving away more food. Presents are, I mean, look at our church, man. We're getting donations of toys for kids and stuff like that. So the whole St. Nicholas thing is more of a symbolic gesture to be good to your neighbors, right? To be good to your fellow man and to take care of each other and not be
But
so selfish with your money and everything, because this time of year is more
is there a
forgiving,
meaning
right?
behind Santa Claus? Is it just the name? I mean,
So everything that I read on it, he really truly, the Santa Claus that we know of today, it's pretty crazy to think about this, because this is not that long ago as far as historically. This
yeah,
is going to go back into, don't quote me on this, like the 30s or 30s.
yeah.
So the first time that the picture of Santa Claus that we know was brought up was with the Coca-Cola company. They had a campaign and they had a guy draw up like an art sketch or whatever, of Santa
Yeah.
Claus. And of course, what color is Santa Claus's get up? It's all
All
red,
right.
right? So Coca-Cola's color was red, and it all fit with everything. So they were the ones that really started that off. I mean, you
With the
remember.
name Santa Claus as well. This is why I'm asking. This is where I'm going with this. And guys, don't get crazy on me, all right? But I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, and Jay is. But why is the guy all in red? And the word Santa, if you scramble that, you could spell Satan. I'm just saying, man. I'm just like, those are exact letters you need to spell Satan, and you do Santa, and he's
Yeah.
all red. A little weird. Little weird. Coca-Cola clearly didn't do your research on this guy who did the drawing. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay, so the actual name, most names going forward get changed around, right? Because of translations and stuff like that. So the name Santa Claus was back in the 1700s,
Uh-huh.
and it was Saint Nicholas. The Dutch, right? So again, people pretty high up in the atmosphere up there, that were kind of more in the pagan side of things, and then they started, converting over to the Christianity belief. It was Saint Nicholas. So Sintnikolaas. And that was Dutch for Saint Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
So the like short name for it was Sinterklaas. 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 So that translation, Sinterklaas, became Santa Claus.
I don't
Right.
know, bro. I'm a
So
little iffy about that, but
the first time it was used in the press in the United States was in 1773. So that's all I could find on it. And so that's a long
the
time ago,
name.
man. Yeah. The name
Well,
Santa Claus. Yeah.
wow,
Instead of
that's yeah. Well,
Sinterklaas or whatever the Germans had called him, Krampus. Yeah. So yeah, that
Herr Klaus.
Herr Claus.
I don't know.
Viva ask the questions.
Viva.
So, and then of course the tree, the same thing. People will bring up a big deal about, well, the tree's pagan and everything. That's not the way it started. The pagans may have had trees, but the very first thing of having a tree was to bring back the whole idea of the original Garden of Eden. And there you go. That's kind of how it all got its
Simple,
start.
simple,
Kind of
see,
simple. And yeah, and it's again, don't put too much into it. I love the historical part of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And but there's no need for us to really get like crazy and go down rabbit holes with everything. I do that because I enjoy it.
yeah.
But
I don't. I clearly don't.
but
I like the simplistic answer to things. The most simple way, just layman's terms, tell me what I'm doing here. And I don't. It just because you start digging in one hole and then you create another, and before you know it, you're way in it, and it's crazy. And but I'm glad that today in this episode we're able to explain and really tell people, look, yes, there was pagan traditions that were happening at the time. They were kind of concealed under Christian belief in order to eradicate them. Not that we took their beliefs or their
No, not at all.
pagan celebrations and converted it into Christmas. We have to remember that the true meaning of Christmas, right, is found in the gift of Jesus coming to earth to offer salvation to us. That's the true meaning of Christmas, and that's what we believe as Christians.
Right.
And you know, and it's important for us to not sit there and start trying to split hairs and trying to go down these rabbit holes and trying to
Yeah.
find excuses not to buy mom that little puppy she's been wanting, you know, and or whatever the case is. You don't find excuses. But I think what we forget, and it's sad that we do get too involved in the meaning of things, like
Oh, yeah.
behind the scenes kind of thing,
Yeah,
and we forget
absolutely.
about things. And let me just, I'm going to read this passage real quick. It's from Isaiah 9:6. Peace. So in Christmas, we try to follow certain Christian beliefs in as far as loving one another, being in peace and in harmony with one another. It's a moment of celebration, not celebrating just ourselves, but celebrating the fact that we were saved from our own sins, right?
Right.
And that we could come together as a family, as friends, you know, to
Yeah.
celebrate, not giving gifts, which is, you know, it's nice, right? Because it's kind of like an extension of your love for someone, right? You feel that I did this for you. You know, I know back then, you remember those little glue and noodle designs and
Oh,
things
yeah,
that we
yeah.
used to do
Popsicle sticks.
for our moms for Christmas, or
Yeah.
those ashtrays we used to make for them for Christmas and stuff. You remember those?
Mom doesn't smoke, but you got her an ashtray.
Yeah, you about to get a ashtray with your name in the bottom. Remember those?
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
do.
we get so caught up in the moment sometimes that we don't even think that, you know, and it's funny because people get anxiety during the holidays. They're so
Yeah.
stressed. They're so like, man, it's not about that. And we need to step
Nope.
back a little bit and start looking at, like, one, if you're together with the people that you love, your family, your friends, that's a lot right there. That's a lot already in itself.
That is a gift in itself, man.
Exactly. And we take that for granted, right? Because
Yes, we do.
that's just, as humans, that's what we do. We take
Yep,
things for granted.
we
And
do.
Christmas is that thing where, look at us, everybody's out there. Go to a mall. Not today, clearly,
Not
because
today.
it's horrible. But a week back from today, how were those malls? Going crazy, right?
Crazy.
Sale
People everywhere.
registers going crazy, man.
Ding, 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 ding.
Credit cards are
And all the poor Amazon drivers are just going nuts right now.
I feel so bad for them. Everyone forgets
And
the
then
true
returns after
Oh god, don't even start talking about it.
January.
I hate retail. And then, but they lose the significance
Oh,
of
yeah,
Christmas, the gifts of
absolutely.
all those things. You know, it was, man, I remember my grandmother knitting things, putting stuff together for handmade stuff that
Yeah.
she made, you know, baking stuff, or, you know, just gifts like that, you know. And my grandma really just didn't give gifts. Her gift to the family was the food, cooking, doing all that. You know what I mean?
Man.
That was her gift. And you know, it was really for the kids, because the kids really didn't understand a lot of things. And you were just, you know, kids were
Right.
giving things like that.
And
The
I,
adults were and especially in the family, a Mexican family, adults in the corner drinking beer, getting
yeah.
ready, you know.
Well, think about it right now, man. Think about your birthday, right?
Yeah.
When you're a little kid, every birthday comes around, you get all excited because you're going to get presents, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Christmas.
Yeah.
We're adults. How many presents do you get for your birthday now?
Lucky one.
Yeah.
I didn't
right?
for a long time because I wasn't living here in this
Yeah.
in Arizona. But
And right. And the thing is you've kind of grown, and your whole hope for your birthday is to, like, you and I, let's go get some food or something,
Yeah.
you know. Of
Well,
course,
bro,
it's always
that's,
food.
That's outside of that's in
That's
holidays,
that's
outside of
every
holidays,
weekend.
bro. Come on, all of this. That's a horrible example.
That's a random Thursday morning, you know, if we're free.
Food, yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's more of a thing for kids as far as the presents and everything go. And then, you know, family members or loved ones that, you know, for whatever special reason.
Yeah.
But I do remember I'm not sure what age I was, but you were talking about your grandmother. And my grandmother, there was this one particular holiday, and one of the family members was complaining of how hard it was to go and get all the gifts and everything that they had to get for the kids and this and that.
Wow.
And I remember my grandmother saying, "That's it. We're not going to do this anymore. Like, next Christmas, we started doing gift exchanges where
Oh, yeah.
everybody bought one gift
Yeah.
and we do an exchange. And then it got down to where we just basically did like gag gifts. And then it got to where we didn't do anything at all. And I don't remember what year we stopped, but we don't give gifts anymore at Christmas time. Like we just don't do it. And we're together. We eat, we hang out for the day,
Yeah.
watch TV, or, if you're a sports person, watching the game or whatever's going on. And that is so much more of a peaceful thing to have your family together,
Yeah.
and not worry about all the gift nonsense. Again, if you have little kids and stuff like that, giving to them and everything. I looked up something while we were sitting here. So in 1931, Coca-Cola hired Dutch illustrator. Now remember, we talked about the Dutch and then having the name Sinterklaas or whatever his name was. Dutch illustrator Haddon Sundblom to create a new image of Santa for their ads. This was Coca-Cola. Sundblom's Santa was inspired by the 1822 poem from a visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. Sundblom's Santa was jolly with a red velvet vest and white beard. That is kind of the beginnings of Santa Claus, and so who was that? That was Coca-Cola. Who is that? That's a company wanting to sell stuff. So if you go into mall, commercialize. You go into a mall today, and there's a Hallmark in almost every dang mall if the mall is still open, right? And what do those Hallmarks do? They have cards during every time. I mean, Halloween, they've got tons of stuff out there. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. I forget Father's Day.
Whatever.
But every Easter, I mean, think of every holiday, man. There's cards and gifty kind of stuff for everything. You can't, St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo. And that's funny because...
Whoa. What cares about Cinco de Mayo now?
No, but what's funny is Cinco de Mayo is not even a U.S., but we find an excuse to use it, right?
It's not even a Mexican holiday.
Right. And technically, St. Patrick's Day, it was just brought over here by the Irish. So
Irish,
so I mean, it's not really an American, let's say, holiday. I'm surprised we don't celebrate like Boxing Day and stuff like that. But so everybody, we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Christmas from our families to yours.
From our families to yours. Yep. You guys have a safe and happy Christmas. Hopefully you get some good presents this evening, if that's your thing. And some people stay up till midnight on Christmas Eve.
Mexicans.
That's
what we do. Our tradition is stay up to midnight so the kids are open gifts. By that time, we're intoxicated, full of tamales, and ready for menudo. You know what I mean? So, that's what it is. But
look at that. It's already 12 noon the next day.
What's happening here? I'm going to take a nap. What? You're making menudo? No, time not to nap. But hey, guys out there, have a blessed holiday. For those of you celebrating midnight mass, make sure you guys go out there for midnight mass. Very important. Remember the reason for the season, and let's not commercialize being Christian. Let's do what's right and celebrate the birth of Christ, our Lord and Savior, and be a better person. I think that Christmas time is a good time for us to start being better better to each other, being better to family, forgiving each other, and just, have a different outlook in life. Don't wait till New Year's and your resolutions. You never fulfill them. Let's be honest. Come on, man. I've been on, I don't know how many diets every year, and not one have I ever fulfilled. So,
I started mine in August, and it worked better than any January I've ever done. So there you go.
Oh, man.
All right, everybody. Well, Merry Christmas. And
Christmas.
Remember, take care of one another.
Remember to do better and be better.
And as always, God bless America.
We'll see you guys.
See you next Tuesday.
Be careful out there.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad.